Welcome in, everybody, as we look forward to another week of the college football season. I'm Simone Eli, joined by Cole Cubelic, and the first edition of Auburn post-game SEC victory for the 2024 season. We are going to chat about the big win over at the Wildcats and look ahead to Vanderbilt for the Auburn Tigers. Let's go head to head. All right, everybody, let's get right to it. The good news, a win for Auburn. Cole, we talked about this last week. We were hopeful, but we weren't sure of what this would look like as Auburn went to Lexington. They got down early, but it really seemed like things got into the flow of it in the second quarter. And then, of course, they were able to put it away there in the second half. What's your immediate reaction of this game here for Hugh Freeze and the company?
Well, it's just big to get that conference win. They needed that more than anything else. We talked a couple of weeks ago that just getting one could jumpstart a few more. And I do think there are winnable games left on the schedule. You mentioned got off to a bad start. Peyton Thorne's interception early was ugly. There are a couple of missed blocks early. Defense lost some 50-50 balls down the field, but then they got it straightened out. And I think that showed a little bit of the resolve of the team, showed kind of mentally and emotionally where this team is. And that's something we've been concerned about. To go on the road, tough place to play against a team that usually brings a lot of physicality and is going to be willing to fight you for 4 quarters. Yeah. Didn't necessarily appear that way the last 2 times out for this Kentucky team. Auburn took advantage of it. I think they showed they now have their offensive line in place, got some extra blocking from receivers and tight ends, and Jarquez Hunter had a career day. So can they build on that? Absolutely. Are they just going to be able to do that moving forward? No, I don't think so. But a lot of positives on both sides of the ball coming out of this game.
Yeah, cool. I always like when you peel back the curtain a little bit as to what things looked like scheme-wise, and was it different? If so, how was it different? We can sit here and talk about Jarquez Hunter going for nearly 300 yards, and finally, Auburn's running the ball, but why? How did they get there? Did they do something different? Was the play calling different from what you were able to see on film? What did you see, I guess, in terms of a plan of attack that led to Jarquez Hunter having success on the ground?
I do think it starts up front first and foremost. Dylan Wade struggled with a couple pass sets at left tackle, got to get his feet cleaned up, but he can handle that position. He's never going to be a liability for you there. Brandon Joyner now beside him at left guard with Connor Liu at center. We know what we've had at right guard all season, and Too Tall back at right tackle. I think this is the offensive line that they really can find a way to go do some things through the ground game. Now, the RPO game was still there. Peyton Thorne still pulled it, made some throws. They were there. I thought Rivaldo Fairweather had one of his best games blocking. Luke Deal had a great deal at tight end. And Jarquez was just kind of on a mission. I do think kind of the structure of Brad White's defense with some of the things that Auburn likes to run, you had a chance to get that going. They didn't fit it extremely well. Some of that based on formations. And they did change a few things up. I know Coach Freeze said earlier in the week, no, it wasn't a lot of different things. We didn't do anything different. But if you watch how they ran inside zone, the backside tight end, a lot of times they'll pull him across in a split zone look to sort of freeze the eyes of the linebackers. Well, they did that initially. Then they would keep him there to sort of lock the backside and help with cutbacks. So they altered a couple of things formationally and how they blocked it during the course of the game, which I think helped the confusion that the Kentucky defense had for 4 quarters.
Where did you see the Auburn defense maybe take a step forward into this game? Obviously, I think they shut down a lot of the rushing attack for Kentucky, but also just some big-time plays that just mattered, that happened when it mattered most. I feel like Auburn has been victim to the opposite of that. Other teams making big-time plays, the interceptions, Oklahoma game, I think back to that game. And, do you think about the interception there in the end zone, so to speak, that could have been a momentum builder there for Kentucky, especially at home and all. How impressed were you by, I guess, guys coming up with big plays when it really mattered?
Yeah, those are the plays that have cost Auburn opportunities to win games this year. And they were able to get an interception late that I felt like was a bit of a nail in the coffin. And I think more so than making big plays, it was things that were problematic early, being able to get past those and not let those continue for 4 quarters. Yeah. Also thought the pass rush was something that you looked at and said, okay, I feel pretty good about that moving forward. Eugene Asante has proven that he is just going to be a lightning bolt when he's asked to blitz. It's what he does best. And I think DJ Durkins realized that. And he's just saying, hey, man, we're going to cut you loose and let you get after the quarterback. Jalen McLeod, I thought showed a pretty good deal of being able to get after the quarterback. And Keon Crawford, I thought, was somebody that, even though there weren't a lot of sacks in the game, they forced the Kentucky quarterbacks to move, get outside the pocket, and didn't allow them to be comfortable. That was a big part of why they were able to have some success on the back end. And physically, I thought things were a little bit better on the back end as well, coming up and trying to make some tackles, doing some things of that nature. So there were a lot of things defensively that I felt like maybe took a step in the right direction that can be continued in the last month of the season.
Yeah, and as we look ahead, I remember we spoke last week, Cole, and you kind of gave like maybe the season outlook, the silver lining, so to speak, for all of the games that were ahead for Auburn. And you said they got to get the monkey off their back. They need to get this first win. Okay, check mark there. Now they head back to Jordan-Hare Stadium, welcome in a Vanderbilt team who has had some big wins this year, been ranked in the top 25, and they're a 7-point favorite, which I know we were not sitting here doing a betting show, and I honestly, I'm really bad at talking about these things at all, but are you a little surprised by that number? Are you surprised Auburn is the favorite to begin with? And I mean, I feel like the number's also gone up since the line came out.
I'm a little bit surprised by it. Yeah, because I don't view Auburn as just a touchdown better than this team. I do think that top to bottom they have more talent, but also I think if you just look at continuity and how these two teams operate together,
Sure.
Vanderbilt's been more consistent this year than Auburn has. Now, you get Vanderbilt in certain situations, they're not a great football team. 2-minute offense, having to push the ball down the field, drop back pass game. If they have to live and die on that, that's not what they're going to be. And I think they proved to Texas last week they can kind of hold up against the run maybe a little bit better downhill than some people thought. So they have two senior safeties that have played forever. They got a linebacker that's led the team in tackles for 2 consecutive years. They got better pass rushers off the edge this year than they've had. And then offensively, we know that scheme. We know that system. We've seen it. Diego Pavia has come into Jordan-Hare Stadium and won before. It's one that requires a lot of discipline defensively to be able to defend. So when you add all that up, I wouldn't mind Auburn being favored in this game. 7.5, not something I would have expected.
Yeah, when you talk about the Vanderbilt quarterback Pavia, obviously he's a familiar face, like you mentioned, to Auburn a year ago in Mexico State. Really an embarrassing loss. I think you might have said one of the most embarrassing that you can remember for Auburn there at home. Do you feel like this team has a bit of a chip on their shoulder? Is that added motivation, so to speak, for this program as they go up against a guy who they have seen, offensive coordinator, who's they've been up against, and the success that he has had this year so far?
Not any more than the chip Diego Pavia has on his shoulder. I mean, this guy's the ultimate. I'm going to find a way to despise you and motivate myself against you based on what you are, what you probably think of me, even if you haven't said it. Wasn't recruited by his in-state schools, had to go to military school, and then went to the portal. Not a lot of people reached out. So he is as confident as he was lacking scholarships coming out of high school, and he uses that as motivation still today. Yeah. It's a dangerous football team, and the problem with it is there are options on every play. You should be right on every play because Tim Beck gives you an out, gives you a place to go with the football on every play. Now, the key to it all is getting the downhill run game going, and Cedric Alexander, I think, is as talented as any other running back in the league. He just doesn't have the numbers and hasn't really been given the opportunities, but he is a dynamo. Whether it's lead blocker, whether it's pass pro, carrying the football, he's big time. They have a big time tight end that's going to be a matchup problem in Eli Stowers, who was a 4-star quarterback coming out, originally committed to Texas A&M, and their offensive line is more physical than it was a year ago. So they offer up issues in a lot of different ways. I do think there's some areas that Auburn matches up well defensively, but this is not a team that's going to come in and roll over. And this is the team that's going to have just as much a chip on their shoulder as some of the guys that played on that Auburn football team a year ago do.
If there's anything this Auburn program was hoping for, wanted, was a win. Now you take another step and say, hey, let's win at home. Obviously, for your hometown fans in the SEC, of course, we know Auburn has won games early in the year, but this is the first win in conference play. Now they're looking to do it again 2 weeks in a row against Vanderbilt at home. It'll be a 12:45 kickoff there on the SEC network. An early game, which I think we've talked before. I think sometimes does benefit the team that's coming in, but what does it look like? What does it look like for Auburn at home? What is it going to take for this team to have success for a second straight week in league play?
Disciplined defense first and foremost. Linebackers' eyes cannot play tricks on them. They've got to be disciplined with their gaps, how they play it, not take themselves out of plays, which happens a lot against this offense. They're going to test the perimeter. You have to play good contain. Obviously, when you do rush the quarterback and he drops back, you have to keep rush lane integrity because he can leave the pocket and break you down that way. He's great with ball fakes, getting defenders off their feet and being able to tuck it and run that way. And then just the offense that offers some triple option veer principles of they want you to think they're doing one thing and they're going to do something else. That can be a flat line option play. That can be a read play to the running back where he's got a pop pass off of it. There are a lot of different things that they can do. They'll shovel pass, which they had success against Alabama with, and they can do it in different ways. And they make it look the same, but they alter it with who's going to get the football and where on almost an every down basis. And Tim Beck does a great job of reading how you're playing it and then calling his plays to that. So I think with what Auburn does have on the edge, Keldrick Faulk's going to be big in this game. It'll be one in the C gap. It'll be one outside the offensive tackles. That's where Auburn has to win this game. And to be able to be a little bit bigger and athletic, either at off-the-ball linebacker or down as a 4-3 defensive end, as I mentioned earlier, Jalen McLeod, Kieron Crawford, I think those two can have big games here. And then two, Eugene Asante, like I said, you use him in pressures, but see ball, get ball is not always terrible against this offense either. Kind of wait, see, and then attack. He could be somebody that, from a green dog blitz perspective, kind of wait to see if the back stays in protection and then go attack the quarterback, even somewhat of a spy against Diego Pavia. I think he's got the speed to be able to do that. And then just match up with the tight end. I think Austin Keys gives you the size to be able to do that. But the speed, I'm not real sure about, because Eli Stowers can run. He's big time. And that's going to be a matchup problem that Auburn's got to handle and manage. And then I think physicality on offense. If you get a little bit of the downhill run game going, it should open up some play action down the field, and it should force those linebackers to play a little bit too aggressive. And I think you could take advantage of that way.
Yeah, as we look at predictions for this game, obviously Auburn will be coming in with a little bit of momentum, something that they haven't had in several weeks now after losing several straight, finally kind of getting that monkey off their back when it comes to getting the win in league play. I think that success, maybe breeds success a little bit. Maybe this is hopeful for me, but I think that Auburn can get it done. Maybe a 24-20 victory against Vanderbilt. If they can kind of maybe get those guys rattled a little bit there. We know it's so hard to play in Jordan-Hare Stadium. It will be an early game, so hopefully the fans getting pretty pumped up early on there on the Plains. For you, Cole, what prediction-wise do you think this one will look like when it ends? Can Auburn get it done for a second straight week?
I think it slows down a little bit. I think Vanderbilt probably tries to play a possession game again. They're not going to speed things up. And then Auburn, I think, realizes, hey, Jarquez Hunter, probably what we need to lean on. We've been saying that for 9 weeks now. And then not that they just went out and said, okay, he's going to be the guy. He was still there in pass protection, caught the ball, was a lead blocker a little bit. I do think you have to be a little bit careful now managing his snaps in general, not carrying the football, but just if he's going to get it 25, 30 times, all the other things that you've been asking him to do just this late in the season, you're going to need him. Be careful with that. But I do think they go out and they let 27 go again. I think Peyton Thorne has grown into someone who's not going to make a ton of mistakes. He might not win you a game, but he's going to make a lot of the right decisions, which is what he did for the majority of that game against Kentucky. And then, like I said, I think the defense actually matches up fairly well. A little bit lower scoring game. I'm going to go 24-21 Auburn, and I think they find a way to get a win, use that motivation from win one. They're going to like how it feels, and I think physically they know they have to show up for this game. There shouldn't be a lot of motivation tactics necessary other than to go out and say, this is a lot of the same cast that embarrassed you a year ago. They'll do it again if you're not careful.
Yeah, no question about that. Will be a huge opportunity for the Auburn Tigers as they return back home before bringing in Louisiana Monroe and then getting back into SEC play as they round out the year. So we will see if the Tigers can get it done with 2 in a row as they welcome in Vanderbilt, a 12:45 kickoff on the SEC network. For Cole, I'm Simone, and we will see you next week.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.